Of all his works, the one that stands out for the greatest notoriety is Plato's Republic, the very first book to map out a perfect society. Many still consider it to be Plato's masterpiece, but for plenty of others it smacks of Big Brother and his army of thought police. In setting up his utopia, Plato argues the case that justice and reason in practice make the world a far better place. Just as we humans have passions which we need to rein in with good sense, so a government must employ reason to rule the multitude it represents. And who knows the most about reason, life, the universe, everything? Plato presents his dream ruler. Guess who? It's the philosopher king. To be fair, Plato knows that philosophers tend not to be practical types. What he means is that nobody's fit to rule till they've earned their scholarly stripes. He suggested preparing all statesmen and women with a very long education, 50 years of science, philosophy, politics, administration. But where should these leaders come from? To enhance their chance of succeeding, the best bet, in Plato's opinion, was a program of forced controlled breeding. Plato proposed a noble lie to divide all the people by class, by claiming the gods made three kinds of citizen: gold, silver, and brass. With their parents selected in secret, the leaders would come from a pool of only those bred by the goldest of gold, quite literally, born to rule. The silver population would perform a military role, enforcing the laws laid down by the gold to keep the brass under control. If this sounds totalitarian, it is, only no one gets shot. It's a fantasy blueprint that Plato creates of how he would steer the great ship of state and guide all aboard to a happier fate, whether they like it or not. There's also bad news for artists. Plato wants them all banned, as their works are dangerous distractions from the high-minded business at hand. Emotions and their glorification serve only to deflect from the thought and cool calculation that nurture the intellect. For Plato, poetry, drama, all art forms threaten our rational health. Though now his own work is seen as great literature, would Plato ban himself? Still, there's far more to Plato's Republic than an art-free fascist state. His rethink of politics highlights conundrums that never go out of date. Given what happened to Socrates, democracy's seen as flawed, and it's open to forces of tyranny which for Plato cannot be ignored. The people want freedom and liberty, a reasonable expectation, yet total and unfettered freedom is impossible within a nation. We know that when my liberties happen to clash with yours, a civilized society depends on rational laws. But if circumstances change, if we ever hit the stage where our capacity for reason is weaker than our rage, if chaos and disorder turn the state upon its head, and fresh leadership's required, the people are sometimes misled. In the free-for-all of democracy, it's democracy that dies, when out of the fire events conspire for a new kind of ruler to rise. A man of the people, who crushes all debate by describing any rivals as enemies of the state. And as his power increases, he starts taking what he can, other people's property, other people's land. But the more he feeds his cravings, his lust for power unchecked, it isn't just the nation that is ultimately wrecked. The consequence of being unjust is never knowing who to trust. Neurotic, tragic, friendless, no dominance is endless. With insight, Plato writes about the tyrant's nerve-racked soul, a slave to his own appetites and lack of self-control. It's often assumed that self-interest is reluctantly curbed by morality, but they are not opposites, Plato suggests, in a balanced and strong personality. It's rational good sense to avoid the descent to a soul-destroying quarrel. The moral of the Republic? It's in your self-interest to be moral. And what's true for the individual is equally true for a nation. It's the rule of reason and justice that creates a great civilization.